I'm very pleased to be here with you again. I am hoping that those students who came the last time are here. I think we see some additional students. Firstly, I would like to ask you if you have any question or questions on short story writing that we discussed the last time. Oh, Jonathan D'Souza, what's your question?
Hi, good morning, Miss. My question was, is it possible to write from the perspective of someone with a different background and timeline? As in our short stories, is it okay if we write from the perspective of, say, an American war veteran or something?
Jonathan, I'm glad for that question because I also would like to add here that you could write from the perspective of an animal. You could write from the perspective of an inanimate object, and people used to do that. I remember once there was a question that asked to write a story on a narrow escape, and the candidate wrote on a seedling, and the concept was this seedling was growing and the earth opened and the seedling jutted out, and in a big foot just came and was about to crush it. So that was the theme of it, and that was a narrow escape. So you can write from any perspective, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
Yes, any other question and short story? Now is the time. Yes, my dear, secondary.
Hi, Miss. Good morning again.
Yes.
So, we were debating yesterday, right?
Yes.
The instructions is write a story based on the sentence below, and it's in quotation mark.
Yes.
Suddenly, my Instagram account was being flooded with messages. Now, we're debating whether we have to include this statement in the narrative, or we have to use it as a topic and actually write the story based on it, and not include the statement.
Sometimes they ask you to directly write a story including these words. Sometimes they ask that. The one question that we looked at on Tuesday, they didn't say write a story including these words. But you know what? Because of my experience and all the years there, I would include the words. You're safe. So today, we want to move on to persuasive writing. Persuasive writing. Now, as you know, this is section D of the examination paper. I trust that all of you have seen a paper, have looked at the paper. My experience tells me, or I know from my experience, that sometimes students go up to the examination and never looked at the paper. You still have a chance to look at the paper. We're going through the whole paper in this season writing. Today, we are looking at the persuasive writing, section D. As I told you before, you are going to do the short story first. I want you, I am pleading with you to follow this trend. You do the short story first, you do the persuasive next. And that's why I'm doing it in this order. Actually, sometimes, or at all times, I give this advice to students whom I come in contact with. And I remember one afternoon after the examination, a student came to me and said, Miss, I didn't get to finish the paper. And I said, how so? Miss, the persuasive. How you didn't get to finish the persuasive when I said that you to do the persuasive as the second item? Mind you, to get a grade 1, you must do all the sections and finish all the sections. You must do all the sections and finish the sections. As I reminded you last class that we are going for 79% of the marks, you already captured some with your SBA. So we will do our persuasive writing now. And we know that we have to do 250 to 300 words. So this is a shorter essay than the short story, 400 to 450. So we get a little ease, we get a little more comfortable. 250 to 300 words. I want to tell you a little secret. which will be a secret anymore, try to write closer to 300 words. Try to write closer to 300 words. Although you will not be penalized for writing 250, but you'll be able to have your strong argument, and with more words that you can get, you'll have a very strong argument. I have examined this question for many, many, many years as a CSEC marker, and I know that when you write close to 300, you're able to complete your argument. So your teacher is accustomed to you and you're accustomed to them, and you keep writing for the practice, because invariably it's the practice that sometimes we lack. So we know now that we will do the persuasive writing as a second item. We also know that we will try our best to write 300 words. So what is the persuasive writing all about? This time in the examination, you will only get one topic. Unlike the short story, when you had a choice, there's no choice here. A couple of years ago, we had 2 questions to choose from. So now it is 1 question. And we have to be able to do the question. If we were to look back at past papers through the years, we will see at first they used to bring some very difficult questions and you have to really go through, but now it's clear, straightforward. And sometimes they ask you to give your views. Sometimes they ask you to support, and sometimes they ask you to oppose. As we say in every section, you'll have to read your question very carefully and understand what the question is asking of you. You will not like to throw away 25 marks because you misinterpreted what is asked of you. That will be foolhardy. So let us just look at this question from a past paper. And as usual, the first part, the rubric, you write in the rule lines and so on. But after that first piece, what a sentence stands out. You must write in standard English. You must write in standard English. The last time I told you in the short story, you will be able to write non-standard if you so desire once it is in the dialogue and so marked. In this section, only standard. Must is on the score, so we keep that in mind. In your answer, you'll be assessed on the appropriateness of the content. So how appropriate is the content? We must stick to what is asked of us. We must be clear, we must be organized, and we must develop our argument. Correctness of grammar, sentences, paragraphs, vocabulary, spelling will be taken into account. Now, this question is not marked holistically. They look at the story and you can get 25 marks. We have 15 marks for the content. So when you write your paragraphs, as we're going to talk about just, so when you write your paragraphs, then 10 marks will be allotted for your correctness of grammar, your sentences, your paragraphs, vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation. So we're going to go through all of those things to remind you. Remember what we are doing now. We are putting everything in a capsule so that you remember, so that we will not drop from our grade 1 point. Before I discuss the mark scheme and remind you of everything else, I would like to read a sample of a good piece, so that you can get an idea. I'm sure that you have done many good pieces with your teachers along the way, but we are just recapping now. So firstly, I'm going to read the question that was asked, and then I'm going to read the response. We'll talk about the response a little, and then we will go through our mark scheme and remind ourselves of the things that we must pay attention to. So, firstly, as we say here, we're just getting one question, so we don't have to battle, are we going to do this, are we going to do that? But this response to this question I'm going to read to you so that you can get an idea. This question asked, write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper opposing the view. So you see right away, we were given the task, and instead of write your views, we have to oppose the view expressed by one of its journalists that popular music of your country is full of sound and fury, meaning nothing. Your answer should be approximately 250 to 300 words in length. You must write in standard. So this is, the rubric here is telling us repetitiously all the time, this is the trend of it. So we have to remember if it's oppose, if it's support, or if it's giving our views. If it's opposing, supporting, or giving our views, we still in our minds, as we think of our answer, we must think about points to supporting, points opposing, and giving our views, so that when we present our argument, if we're opposing, we already think about what people supporting it may see, so we could really and truly in our essay be so strong in our views that there is no question where we stand. So if they ask you for a letter, you will write it in a letter form. We will write it in a letter form. You have your salutation, your ending, and your beginning. So sometimes they may ask you a letter, they may just ask you for an article for your school magazine, and then you just write that article. Now, this is a response opposing that this person is saying. So the question asks for music in your country. So you take your country, this is Guyana, what is the popular music here? You will decide. This person is writing from Trinidad, and their popular music undeniably is calypso music. And this person used these paragraphs to support the argument in opposing the view expressed by the journalist. Now, as you were listening, you would hear a lot of rhetoric and so on. And that is something we're going to look at. We are going to look at that as we go through our paces this morning, the persuasive techniques. Very important. Some people go into the examination and they write a flat piece without writing one persuasive technique. No, no, no. We have 4 sections. The first section is narrative and creativity we see coming up here. This section, we're seeing an argument. Most of you have been involved in debates and so on. It's the same notion that we have, that we do in debate and so on. That's the same notion that we do for this persuasive writing. We are convincing someone to believe in our opinion. We are convincing someone to believe in our opinion. So, we state our problem. We have 2 or 3 solid paragraphs to support our answer. 3, if you can write 3 paragraphs, great. If you can write 3 paragraphs, great. If you can manage to write 2 paragraphs, you must have the length, and that will be great also. So in the first introduction, we state our task, how we're going to handle this. Students, I know that some of you were taught by your teachers or somewhere along the way you picked up something. And many students write this in the introduction. They have a very stereotype beginning. And that stereotype beginning will not really help you to get in the section of excellence. Some people write to say, in this essay, I'm going to oppose this statement, and in my first paragraph, I will do this. In my second paragraph, I will do this. And in my third paragraph, I will do this. That's a little cliche now. I'm urging you to be a little more creative than what I'm in the first paragraph, my second paragraph, my third paragraph. So you could find other connectives, because connectives are very important. Connectives between paragraphs, connectives between sentences, and so on. And the connectives are the words like similarly, in addition. If it's a contrasting point, you can write on the other hand, and so on. So these little connectives will make our essay very smooth. Actually, what I want you to remember as you're writing your essays, that you must use your connectives, and you must navigate with logical thinking. So our technician will now put up the mark scheme, and we are going to go through the mark scheme, and that will be a form, thank you, and that will be a form of recapping and getting in some very pertinent points. So the content, we're looking at the argument and the comment on the argument. So it's two areas, as I mentioned before, two areas. This question will mark on area 1, 15 marks. Area 2, 10 marks. So let's see what is involved, what we have here for area 1. The selection of information or details must be relevant to the focus of the argument. So logically, if we're asked, as we were asked in the question, physical education and sports should be compulsory for all students. Write an argumentative essay giving your views. So it's your views here. So again, your views will involve if you are supporting it or you're opposing it. You're giving your views. So what is the first thing we'll do? We look at the focus of the argument. And now we're going to say what is relevant. So we plan out. We get our 3 points. If perchance you get 2 points, that will be okay also. But you must write enough to get you 250 to 300. So people sometimes ask me, we have to get 3 points? 2 can work. 2 can work. But with 3, if you get 3 points and you develop them fully using your persuasive techniques, you'll be very safe. The argument must show a clear sense of writer's awareness of audience. For example, the writer may take the position that the audience knows nothing about the topic or the audience has some information. So class, when we talk about the audience here, to whom we are writing. To whom we are writing. Sometimes you might get a letter where you have to convince a family member to do something. The audience there will be the family member. The audience will be family member. They say physical education should be compulsory for students. And you're writing this, who is your audience? Your students, educators, and so on. So you bear in mind. They say if your audience is somebody who knows nothing about the topic, you'll have to do some more explanation. You have to explain physical education. You have to explain what compulsory is. If your audience knows about that, you go right ahead with your points and you develop. But audience is very important. If you are writing a letter to your mother, they ask you to convince her that your career choice is the one you really want and not the one she wants. Even though we are writing in standard English and we must, we can be a little endearing. We can say, dearest mom, that's standard English. You can say, dearest mom, and you could say, here comes your favorite daughter or son. And I know, mom, that you always try to give me my way. So you're putting some emotions there, but you're in standard English still, and the tone is different because the audience is your mom. If you are trying to convince some businessman in your area to put up a recreational court for the young people, you wouldn't address them, hi, how are you today? Even though that's standard English, it's not the right tone, and the audience is not, you have to be very businesslike. This, even if the businessman is your father and you're coming as a group from the area, you come in as you realize this is business, not all this emotion and love, who's your favorite child and so on. So that is how important our audience is. We keep in mind our audience, and when we know our audience will be able to tell us what register to use. When we say the register, we're talking about the language. We know it's standard English, so don't let's get mixed up. We know it's standard English, no time at all. Even if you're talking to your friends and you're the head prefect and you're trying to implore the class to attend graduation because somebody feel they don't like the rules this year and they're planning to boycott graduation. You're the head prefect and you're trying to get them to attend, to persuade them to attend, to convince them, to let them see it from your point of view. And it's your friends, that you could really, but you won't go now saying thing and using a few expletives that you tell them off the field and the basketball court. The audience there is a class. So it's important we know our audience. And the next point, the writer must use the register. The register is the language that we use. The supporting details that are used to develop the argument must fulfill one or more of the functions. So when we choose our topic sentence or thesis statement for each paragraph, we have to know what we are doing here. Are we explaining? Are we illustrating? Are we telling them a little story, an anecdote? So these are the persuasive techniques. We must have 3 different persuasive techniques that we use. We must, because this is the persuasive section. If we write a flat essay without using any persuasive technique, no, that won't be a persuasive argument. So class, there are many, I say class, students from everywhere. There are many different persuasive techniques that we can use. If we decide that we're writing 3 paragraphs, we must have 3 different techniques. One technique that is very popular is the rhetorical question. Even this sample that I read to you, we have 3 rhetorical questions. And the rhetorical question is a good technique, but that will be only one. If we had time and we were in a different space and time, I would ask you now for some of the other techniques. But if I do that and we open mic, that will be very confusing. And because this is a top-up, this is putting everything in capsule, I know that you know some of the techniques, that you are agreeing that physical education should be made compulsory. And you want to tell of a little story, a little anecdote to support your point, that somebody who was obese and who couldn't function and got sick and had to be taken to hospital, and the doctor decided that physical activities are necessary here for a good well-being of this person. You could tell that story. But remember, it's not a short story you're writing. So this anecdote must just be a little piece of something. As the person was writing about capital punishment once, and capital punishment, as you know, that's the death penalty, the ultimate penalty for when someone commits murder, and somebody was writing about capital punishment and why it should not be abolished. And somebody wrote a little anecdote about this man who was over telling somebody, the most I can do when I kill the person is put me in jail, where I'll get my 3 square meals. I'm living for the rest of my life doing nothing. And that's a little anecdote that you can write in the piece to show that people are presumptuous and sometimes they premeditate this business of murder, and they could sit down in jail on the taxpayers' money. So you tell that little story, you overheard this man, not no big long thing. So that will be the persuasive technique for that paragraph. The next paragraph, then you could use rhetorical question techniques. You could respond to authority, what people in authority say. You can use emotive words. You can bring the audience in the story by appealing to them directly. We know that you are aware, so that you is the audience and you're bringing the audience in directly. So there are many techniques that you can use. I know people are in love with rhetorical question, but we will need more than rhetorical question for our essay. 3 paragraphs, 3 different rhetoricals. Appeal to emotions. We have, depending on, as we say, authoritative figures, and we have repetition, and when we repeat for emphasis. Now, I just want to remind you that repetition, that's a good device, as against redundancy, which is an error in English. So, let's go to the next point. Our technician will put that up for us. No, we go back to the same area 1. Thank you. So we have, that's very important. In illustrating, explaining, expanding the argument, the writer must make use of a range of strategies. For example, you define, you show causes and meaningful comparisons. Again, those are all the techniques that you're putting. Cause and effect. As a result of this will happen. If we are defining, we're clearly outlining there, giving the definition of what we mean and what we're talking about. The writer must argue from a consistent point of view. This is very important, students. The writer must argue from a consistent point of view. This means the writer may anticipate the opposition's arguments, but must not contradict his or her own. So if you have done debates with your teachers, and you should have, perhaps some of you were in the preparing and were participants in the J.F. Haynes debating competition. So this point is saying that you must be consistent. We are saying, and we are agreeing here, let's say we are agreeing that physical education must be compulsory. And we are supporting that point. But we are conscious of the points that the people will make who oppose this point. Somebody who's opposing this point might want to say that physical education will take up so much time and we will not be able to do our core subjects. Now, we are supporting, but we know what the opponent will come with. So we can mention that point that the opponent will come with, but we tear it to shreds and to show that we are still correct. So the opponent might say, physical education will take up too much time on our timetable, but we are going to say, if that is so, perhaps we can introduce an extra hour in the mornings so that physical education can be done. So we hold our point, we are consistent. We're not going to be this on that side, we're wavering and not coming to a full conclusion. Let me just go that over because there's a very crucial point. You be consistent, you anticipate the opponent's argument, but you tear that down and show why your argument is superior. And then, so that's the content. That's the content. We have our 3 points. We develop them, whether it's called for definition, expanding. We know who our audience is, and our audience will tell us how we write our register, what language we use. We must put our persuasive techniques. We must, or else it's not a persuasive piece. So we select 3 for 3 paragraphs. If it's 2 paragraphs, we're going to write, we are going to use, we say we're going to use 2 paragraphs, but we have the word limit there, and we have 2 persuasive devices. And then we have our conclusion, where in our conclusion, just like in the debates, we do not introduce any new point there. We just wrap up what went before. And that is for content. For 15 marks. And then how we organize. We must organize, organization and logical. I told you before that connectives and logical thinking, we must as a hallmark of writing this good persuasive piece. And we must remember them, logical thinking. So organization, how we organize in a logical manner. The writer must present the details in a logical sequence that maintains the focus of the argument. The logical sequence must be clear within the sentences, across the sentences in the paragraphs, and between the paragraphs. So we keep in our logical thinking throughout. Remember, as we mentioned paragraphs, I'm going to remind you that we must write in paragraphs. I have encountered students writing without indenting and so on, and you're going to lose very low marks. You're not going to pass at all. And as I mentioned yesterday, on Tuesday, some people were not here. You must write in paragraphs. We're not skipping a line after each paragraph. Students, I'm seeing this thing cropping up, skipping a line after each paragraph, and I don't know where that originated. You must not. You indent. So you have your first paragraph, this next line you come, you indent, we know that's a new paragraph, and you go on. Paragraphing is very, very, very important. The conclusions the writers draws must arise naturally and logically from the arguments presented. So when we come to our paragraph, to our conclusion, we're not stepping out and writing something that does not relate to our entire paragraph. This is concluding, tying up our argument. This final paragraph in the sample that I read, this is good music, good art, the expression of a people. Listen again and you'll agree. So, he has just tied up here everything that he told Mr. Williams before. 15 marks. Not bad at all, class. We can get students, we can get our 15 marks. The 15 marks. We have to know and read our rubric, understand our topic, know what the topic is asking of us, and do not stray away. Now, because it's an English examination, we must write in standard English and know what we are writing. So, our area 2, sir, area 2, let us see what the 10 marks. For 10 marks, what are we going to get here? Correct use of structure of the language. Now, it's an English exam. Don't think it's French, it's not Spanish. It's an English exam. I don't know if you're writing a history exam, if they pass you on spelling and grammar. I don't know. But I know that this is an English exam and they want your expression to be great. Correct use. Just like in the short story, sentences must be complete. Subordinate clauses chosen must be of the appropriate type. So we do not want segment fragments. Our subject and our predicate. Full sentences. Sentences must be clear. We don't want ambiguity. We don't want that. That this sentence is telling us, what is this sentence telling us? The examiner must ask that question. Clear sentences. You can write simple, clear sentences, class. Simple, clear sentences. Just like in the short story, sentences must be meaningful. We have 300 words to write, and let our sentences be meaningful. From this sample I read, every single thing is meaningful. There must be effective and appropriate transitions. That is what I told you about those connectives between sentences and paragraphs. Those are the connectives. adjectives. On the other hand, similarly, moreover, likewise, as the case may be. As a result, consequently, if you're dealing with time, you have those connectives of time. If you're dealing with similar, as we say, we have in addition and so on. If we are dealing with contrasting condition, we have in contrast, by contrast. On the other hand, those are very important, and they're saying here to you, they must be effective and appropriate transitions. Let us leave out firstly, secondly, thirdly, and finally, because you know what? We have learned in our language that through overuse, things become cliches. And I know that you know cliches and error in English because they're overused. And just as how you are very young and you're different and a younger generation, your grandmother, your great-grandmother used to use those, just like how your outfit and your clothing and so on is different now, even though some are recycled and we come back from bell bottoms to straight, whatever. But you are you now, and we want to see the difference from your grandmother's language, your great-grandmother's a cliche, so you come a little fresh. And subjects and verbs must agree. I can say this over and over and over. Concord. We get a lot of problems, students. You know what I would like to tell you? I would like you to finish early, and as you're recapping, you take a pencil and lightly underline every verb if you have the chance, and ensure that they agree that if subjects and verb, this is a concord, you underline every verb and you look at the subject to see if it agrees with the verb. A singular subject takes a singular verb. A plural subject takes a plural verb. Underline each verb if you have the time, because they will take out a lot of marks for this. I can promise you that. Again, like in the short story, pronouns must agree with their antecedents. Antecedents, for those who weren't in that first class, antecedents, those are the nouns that come before the pronouns. So if we are talking about, as I said the last example, Jack and Jill, and we're coming to write our pronoun, it will be they. We talk about Mary, it will be she. We talk about John, it will be he. So don't get confused with antecedents. That simply means antecedents, that word there, antecedents there, means what is coming before, what noun is coming before the pronoun. And there must be consistency in the use of tense. This is the one I want you to underline all the verbs. With your pencil, of course, lightly, to ensure that all the verbs are consistent. That if we're writing in past tense, we're writing in past tense. If we're writing in the present tense, we have to sustain that. That's a little difficult. But whatever tense we have decided on, we must. You see, 10 marks here, So you might do very well in the 15 marks, and you get all your points, and you really and truly understand the techniques and so on. But if the English is poor in area 2, it can bring us down. Because let's say, all right, we scrape 10 of the 15 marks. We scrape 12 of the 15 marks. That's a lot. That's a lot. You have to write very well to get 12 of those 15 marks. And then in the second part, in area 2, out of the 10, we get 4. That's 12 and 4, 16. And that will not give us a grade 1, 16 out of 25. 16 out of 25 will not give us a grade 1. So I want you to think about that all the time, that every part of our examination, we must pay careful attention, and we must remember that we're in an examination and it's only our best that is required of us. Ever since we started nursery school, we started to build for this examination, exit examination. For many of us, this examination, CSEC, will be our exit from secondary school. Some of us will continue, some of you will continue to the sixth form, but this is your exit. So it's your best and the final chance in school. So we have one other section here, accuracy of mechanics. Correct spelling, punctuation, you must know to use your capital letters, you must know to use a full stop, you must know to use the question marks and so on. You know, some people don't know to use the comma at all. So, recap the use of the comma. Ask your teachers, and even if you don't see your teachers, just like how you could Google anything and stay on that phone and Google all the trends and so on, Google the use of the comma. Because we do not have time here to go through that. And your teachers might not have time either to go through, because when we close tomorrow and then you go off to your respective places, I don't even know if you're going to come back. But I want you, wherever you are, to tune in on the 28th and on the, we don't need this part, sir. We tune in on the 28th and the 2nd. So we could, the 2nd will be very important for us because we're going to pump you up and have you very buoyed for the exam on the 5th. So whether you are, if you're coming back to the school, the location, I know some of the interior schools, you might not come back, but you'll have to come back to write the examination anyhow. But I want you to tune in on the 28th and on the 2nd when we can just buoy you up there for the examination.